Former President Donald Trump was raging on social media just minutes before Judge Juan Merchan was set to give jury instructions in the hush money election interference trial. Closing arguments ended on Tuesday, and so now it's up to the jury to decide if Donald Trump is guilty of any of the 34 counts related to the concealed payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 general election. So Trump decided to take to
Truth Central
and post this all caps rant. Quote, "Kangaroo court, a corrupt and conflicted judge, reliance on counsel, advice of counsel, not allowed by Merchan, a first, his rulings on a case that should, according to all legal scholars and experts," all of them, really, should have never been brought, have made this a Biden-pushed witch hunt. There was no crime, except for the bum that got caught stealing from me. In God we trust. That last part, do you though? Do you? Okay, so let's dive into it, right? So he calls Michael Cohen a bum, which is basically his real only defense other than it wasn't a crime. Why wasn't it a crime? Because I didn't want it, because I don't think it should be a crime. I think it should be perfectly fine to cook your books. Okay. Interesting defense there. So now, Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, in his closing arguments on Tuesday, actually laid into Cohen's credibility, the same thing they've been doing pretty much the entire trial here. There are some interesting lines here. In fact, Blanche called Cohen the human embodiment of reasonable doubt. Quote, "He lied to you repeatedly. He lied many, many times before you even met him. His financial and personal well-being depend on this case. He is biased and motivated to tell you a story that is not true." Okay, well, being dishonest is the criteria here, right? And based on, your financial and personal well-being, okay, well, that's your criteria. Why don't you look at your client, okay? Because Trump is also guilty of all that. Because at the end of the day, Trump personally signed the checks to Michael Cohen to help cover up a $130,000 payment to hide this affair, which would help his financial and personal well-being. Look, becoming president happens to be pretty helpful when it comes to financial opportunities, right? And, as Trump understands it, being president also, in his view, makes you immune from any and all prosecution, which is, again, personally advantageous. So, there are definitely some incentives here for Trump to make sure that he wins. I mean, and by the way, he's got those same incentives now. In fact, even more so, because this time, if he wins, that might be his only way of staying out of prison. So let's be clear. So now, Blanche then said Cohen was, quote, the MVP of lying, or the gloat, greatest liar of all time. Look, it's really funny because it's projection, okay? That honor, the honor of being the gloat, is actually the person who was on trial, who in 4 years of being president told over 30,000 false or misleading claims. So, okay then, the gloat, way to have the pot call the kettle, okay? Now, Blanche also said of Cohen, he's been obsessed with President Trump for over 2 decades. He worked for Trump. Yeah, did you ignore that part? Like, he worked for Trump? He went from loving President Trump to outright hatred. Oh, I wonder why. Maybe it has something to do with, I don't know, going to prison for Donald Trump? For doing crimes on Trump's behalf? Might make somebody turn against you. Just saying. Look, the guy ended up in solitary confinement for over 2 weeks. That's literal torture, according to all the research, all medical professionals, and even the UN. Okay? And like Cohen's like, I think that them putting me in solitary is retribution from Trump for me flipping. So, would I want to see that same person rot in jail too? Yeah. Cohen's been very honest about that. All right. Very, very honest about that. And honestly, nobody could really blame him. It's not like he would want to hide the glee that he'll feel if Donald Trump ends up being found guilty by a jury. But here's the thing, right? So now the case was not just about Cohen's testimony. Now, Cohen, again, provided some pretty key testimony, right? But it all matches up with the evidence that was presented. And so the case that we have against Trump is pretty clear. Business records were falsified. They have receipts, okay? Cook the books. Now, normally that is a misdemeanor, okay? So it's still a crime, okay? But that crime was committed with the intent to influence an election. Again, you got to look at the timing, right? At that time that they were doing the catch and kill scheme, he was running for office, and oh, look at that. The Access Hollywood tape drops, getting him into a little bit of trouble, and then suddenly they're looking for this story. They're asking around, you know, they're asking to see if anybody knows it so they can buy the rights and then sit on it. That's the whole purpose of the catch and kill, to keep it from getting out. And finally, Trump had ordered this from the top, wanted these records to be falsified for the purpose of ensuring that the negative story did not hurt him in that upcoming election. He signed the checks, his responsibility, his orders. He planned it along with Cohen and David Pecker. Simple, okay? Now, funny enough, if he was so worried about this affair having an impact on his alleged affair, having an impact on his personal life, then why would he go around bragging about it? Well, that's exactly what he did. Sure, it would look bad if it got out during an election, but apparently he had no problem bragging about it to people on the golf course. In fact, according to the Daily Beast, there was a celebrity athlete who spoke to that publication and condition of anonymity. He said that he was close to Trump and Stormy Daniels while they socialized back in 2006 at the American Century Championship Celebrity Golf Tournament that was on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe. So, though Trump sometimes referred to Daniels indirectly as a porn star, the athlete said he emphasized that it was understood among the golfers who heard the boast that Trump, at the time best known as the host of a reality TV show, The Apprentice, was saying that he had slept with Daniels. It was clear to me and everyone who heard him that he was talking about Stormy, the athlete said, adding that Trump encouraged other celebs to try and have sex with Daniels, behavior the athlete described as crass, gross, and stupid. I think that deserves an honorary stupid. All right, because it is. Quote, he'd say all these things like, "You've got to bang a porn star. It's incredible." And said, "It added 20 yards to my drive today." Wow. Gross. So, look, he bragged about it. Okay, that's not the relevant part, though, right? So, he can brag about it all he wants, right? Back in 2006. The relevant part here is that according to the athlete, and how this ties into the case, shortly before the 2016 election, around the time Daniels' hush money payment was being negotiated, he had received, this athlete, multiple calls from people who first declined to identify themselves, and second, had asked what he had remembered from that same golf event 10 years before. You know, the one that he allegedly had bragged about nailing a porn star. The athlete told the Daily Beast that at the time, he did not fully understand the reason for the calls and did not answer the questions. In hindsight, though, he acknowledged that, boy, those calls, they seemed a bit ominous. Yes, definitely. So, and remember, by the way, at the time, Daniel's story was not exactly public information, which is why Trump, Pecker, and Cohen were doing this whole catch and kill scheme to make sure that it didn't become public knowledge, that it wasn't broadcast everywhere, because it would have been. It would have been, because it would have been a big deal. It would have been on media all over, and voters would have actually been able to say that, oh, this guy, had an alleged affair with a porn star, and then, oh boy, that would have, maybe it would have changed some people's opinions. Of course, I have the benefit of hindsight to say that it probably wouldn't have, but we'll never know because Trump buried it. And that's the whole crux of the case. Trump burying it so that voters didn't get to hear that information before they went to the polls. So, that said, the athletes didn't actually testify. It wasn't part of this case, but it's just another piece here that corroborates the entire plan here. The fact that he was called around 2016 by people that were not identified to say, what do you know about this conversation that you had with Trump? I think that's pretty fascinating. So, getting back to Trump's unhinged response, it shows that, yes, he knows he did it and is very concerned about the evidence and how much that, all this evidence being against him would be enough to show that he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.